Ann Benetti, and today I am in my rock garden area. I have a berm with large boulders, and I mostly am growing plants like these dwarf conifers. Now, dwarf conifers are great because they don't need much root room. They grow very slowly. I get them, there's a wholesale nursery called Isley Nursery out of Oregon that ships them all over the United States. So you can find dwarf conifers like this. But I'm noticing that this dwarf conifer is getting some brown needles in here. I'm going to go ahead and use my gloves to kind of get rid of the brown needles, because here's a tip. On an evergreen, once these needles turn brown, they're not going to turn green again. So it's okay to, kind of get them to come off, because I'll be encouraging new growth by transplanting this plant out of the mixed container into its own pot. Now, in case I forget the name of any of my dwarf conifers, the plastic tags, I go ahead and I just slip them right into the side of the container, so I know that this is called a compressed juniper, Juniperus compressa. So I'm going to remove this juniper, but I'm going to leave this little hinoki cypress here that's a dwarf, and I'm going to also remove this fern spray cypress from the container and transplant that into another container. Eventually, this is going to be going, this fern spray cypress, you can see how big it has grown in another part of the rock garden. I'm going to plant this right into the ground. It's not staying very dwarf. But here's the problem when you have these very small containers, and these plants have been here, 7, 8 years. If I try to cut out my juniper, it's very difficult to cut out in the container. So, first I'm going to remove the mulch. That means I am removing wine corks. Yep, I have been using wine corks as a mulch on top of plants for several reasons. One, the wine corks help to insulate from the cold and the heat, just like any other mulch. It's shading the soil. And second, when I water, the water penetrates very quickly through the corks so that these plants get the water that they need. Because dwarf conifers, they don't need a lot of water, but they do not want to dry out. So, what I found is if I go around with my hori-hori, and I just loosen all around the sides of this metal window box-like container, then I should be able to, my hands over here, lift out the entire thing. So now I have all these well-rooted plants that need dividing. Let me put it over here into the wheelbarrow. I'll show you how I do that. Okay, so I'm going to get ready to cut through these root balls that have 3 separate plants. The middle one's going back into the original container. I'll add some other dwarf conifers, succulents to it. This great big fern spray cypress is going to go into the ground. It's going to get bigger. And then my columnarus juniper is going to go into this pot because it's rather shaped tall, and I'm just going to really pamper it because it's been struggling because of these dry brown leaves. So the first thing I'm going to make sure the soil is right. I have potting soil in here that has perlite in it, but I'm going to add even more drainage material because this is a dwarf conifer. It really likes good drainage. Remember, conifers like this, they want to grow up in the mountains where it has lots of rocks and perfect drainage. So for a container this size, maybe a little over than a gallon in size, I'm going to add about this much of this pumice stone. And pumice stone, you can buy this at any nursery. It's used to make soil lighter, like to grow cactus in. Don't be afraid to add pumice stone to any potting soil that is going to contain plants that need really good drainage. That means I work the pumice stone into potting soil if I'm going to be growing sedums, succulents, or these dwarf conifers. Okay, so now I take a really great tool. This is called a pruning saw. It's made to saw right through plants. You can try a serrated electric bread knife or a sawzall. But what I want to do, and look what I found in here. I found these little baby ferns. Actually, I'm going to take these out first. A little baby fern, I can add that in one of my tiny little containers. and another baby fern. Just that little bit of a root, so I can add that to a shaded container. And then down here I have, look at this. Really interesting. What I have here is I have a big juniper. So what happens is this dwarf juniper has a columnous form. Originally, it came from the stalk of a regular juniper. See this big, large juniper spray? So I'm going to get in here and make sure to cut that out. I don't want... See, that is a whole different type of juniper. And that's going to be large. Take that off. On the other side, found another one. Okay, now that could explain why this dwarf juniper is not doing so well, because it's a hostile takeover. These other junipers, large junipers, are taking over. So now I'm just going to kind of saw. Now you're not going to hurt the plant by sawing through these outer roots. Now we have a very nice root ball here. So, I have no other plants on the sides. I'm going to rough these roots up a little bit here. Now this soil is nice and moist, and if you're in any doubt, soak your plants the night before you do the transplant. Now I'm going to make sure when I put this in here that the plant is not any deeper than it was before. So that's sitting pretty low. So that means I need to add, I tend to work inside the wheelbarrow here so I don't spill soil all over my beautiful turquoise gravel. I kind of have a turquoise theme going on here. Turquoise color theme, this decorative gravel. Okay, I want this to sit about a good inch below the top of the pot so I can add my cork mulch. That's in there pretty good. I'm not going to fertilize right now because it's fall. If it was spring, I would add some slow release plant food. But just making sure the root ball is covered but not buried. Sometimes a good lift up and down helps settle the soil. Okay, so before I go ahead and water well, I will take my juniper back, and I am going to once again cover it with my wine corks. Now you can use rocks, you can use gravel. The reason you want to have something on top of the soil, especially if you have cold winters, is because sometimes when you leave these out all winter, the freezing and thawing action can kind of push them up out of the soil. So here I've got my wine corks. And it's kind of fun to create little miniature scenes. I could take like a broken flower pot, nestle that in here as well. Maybe some bigger boulders, kind of nestle those in here. Okay, there we have it. I'm going to water well. I'm going to let this recuperate, grow in this pot for maybe another couple of years till it greens up nicely, and then I'll use it in my landscape, in my rock garden, maybe someplace else. Remember, it's like your plants have wheels, you people. Don't worry about digging them up and moving them around if they're not doing well. This has been Mary Ann Bonetti with Easy Answers for Great Gardens.